I'm Mike. It's great to meet you. Okay, yeah. Hi everyone, we're here to talk about Homeslice. So we crowdfund down payments for first-time home buyers in exchange for a slice of home equity. Can you take us to the next slide? So why build Homeslice? I'm going to talk about our model and our motivation. The model was my grandmother had moved back to New Hampshire and was living in an apartment, but the rent just kept increasing like crazy. She was going to go through all of her savings, and she reached out. She's like, Mike, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to move back in with your father, which no one should have to do at all. So the alternative to that was that I put most of the down payment cash toward a home that she buys, she services the mortgage, lives in, and it's a great investment for both of us, which is exactly what we did. So that's the model. And then the motivation is a little bit less fun. My mother during COVID was pushed out of her job, and it led to a housing crisis that became a mental health crisis. So there was a very serious suicide attempt, and it was tremendously disruptive for me, for my mother, for our family. And it could have been solved if we had known about it with just a little bit of financial engineering. So that's the motivation. This is very important to me personally, because if we can help people avoid a situation like that, I can rest well at night. And if we back this up, 10,000 feet to the entire society here. Millennials own homes at a rate roughly 1/6 lower than that of Gen X at the same age. First-time buyer rates have fallen off a cliff. Roughly 18% in 2022. I would expect that number is actually much higher once we get that figure this year. And national rent has increased by 13% for single-family houses. Within Asheville, two-bedroom rents have actually increased 25% year over year. So that's pretty unsustainable. You're starting at a lower rate, or you're starting way behind, you're buying houses at a lower rate, and it's getting more difficult to save as you go. And why is this important? When you look at the difference between renting and owning, both of them are pretty expensive, and both of them put a roof over your head, but ownership conveys some real benefits, such as building equity in your home, realizing the appreciation in your home, and having perfect price stability. As we talked about in Asheville, a 25% year-over-year rent increase. That's pretty crazy. So in the United States, homeownership is the typical vehicle for creating generational wealth, and I think that the American dream is sort of at risk if first-time buyer rates continue to decline. So what's the thing that's hitting first-time buyers the most? It is the confluence of down payment and elevated interest rates. So right now, more than half of millennial homeowners carry private mortgage insurance, which is basically just a tax on those homeowners. More than 75% of millennial renters don't even have the cash to put 10% down, which is really punishing in a high interest rate environment like this. And I think everyone is well aware of the overall inflation in rent, outside of rental increases. So it's making it even more difficult. Everyone knows someone that pays $1,500, $2,000 a month for rent, but that makes it really, really hard to save $75,000 to buy a house. So how do we fix this problem? We launch Homeslice. So again, we crowdfund down payments for first-time home buyers in exchange for a slice of home equity. And with time, we're going to launch a marketplace so people can buy and sell those equity shares. And we're going to double click into each one of these. If you want to pull up, Andy. By crowdfunding the down payments, you're giving buyers more purchasing power. You're getting them out of private mortgage insurance, and you're actually decreasing their default risk. The way that it works, our program is our buyers bring 3% down, so it's pretty close to what an FHA loan is. Our investors bring 17% down, so you show up to the mortgage company with 20% down so you can secure a conventional mortgage. Then the buyers purchase, live in, and manage the home themselves. Here we see a family with a little bit of money, our investors with a good amount of money, the bank with most of the money, and that gets you into the home you love. In exchange for that investment, we distribute equity slices, home slices, to each of our investors. So that equity slice is based on what the investor put in as a cash contribution, and it receives an immediate premium. So if an investor puts 1% of a home's purchase price toward the down payment, they receive 1.5% of home equity. Those equity slices, those home slices, convert to cash when they're sold, and we put a 15-year fuse on the relationship between the investors and the buyers. And then lastly, not everyone's going to want to go 15 years with their investment, so we're going to launch a marketplace where people can buy and sell their home slices. This creates an early exit opportunity, and it allows others that want to participate in real estate to go and just buy a home slice and watch that equity appreciate over time. We're not there on the marketplace just yet, but the intent is we make it a really low barrier to entry, something like $100. So our goals here. We want to create a new generation of first-time home buyers. We want to open up home ownership to those that are typically shut out so they can create generational wealth. We want to offer a form of differentiated real estate investing because, thank you, there are lots of platforms and programs that are launching that allow you to pool your money to invest in property, but every single one of them creates a new renter. We want to support by creating new homeowners. We are mission driven. We support individuals, not institutions, and we want to support essential professionals and locals. I think it's especially important here in Nashville, as the city could lose its character or lose its foundation. If the people that operate our bars and restaurants and our breweries can't afford to live here, if our police and teachers can't afford to live here today, Asheville police is down something around 40% of the force because they can't afford to live in the city. That's a travesty. It's bad for all of us. And though we are mission-based, we are very explicitly profit-forward. We want everyone involved to make money, just different folks than normal. And we think we can do this because we've aligned the investor and the owner values perfectly. They both want the house to be worth as much as possible. So how do we make money? Primarily, real estate lead generation. To begin with, we're going to be earning loan origination fees, typically 1% to 2% of the loan's value. With time, we're going to institute a transaction fee for everyone that's involved in the purchase. We will launch that slice marketplace where the exchange will have fees attached to it. We'll launch some marketing and affiliate partnerships, sort of, a partnership with Home Depot or an internet provider or something like that, and then we'll create some value-add services like a virtual HOA, where you pay $50 a month, you have weekly lawn service and annual house painting, things that make it easier for a first-time home buyer. And this is sort of our product evolution. We are just to the left of this MVP, minimum viable product, and Andy's going to pull up a screenshot so you can see what our app looks like. So first, someone signs in and you decide if they're going to be a buyer or an investor, and then you're brought, if you go in as an investor, you are brought all the different fundraising opportunities. For a particular family, they're going to share their story, what their goals are, where they live, their occupation, a little bit of housing data. Our app works today where we ingest from the MLS. Can you back us up one? So we're gonna present houses that they're going to be looking to bid on. And then you decide how much cash you want to put toward that individual's, that family's fundraise. You go a little bit further through the process, sign some documents, and then we put your cash in escrow, and we have armed that family to go out and make a bid on a home. And then, as with any investment, there's a portfolio that can track all of your different home slices. With time, we expect for this to be sort of a gamified, really fun, captivating product experience. Think about Zillow. You go through Zillow, you decide, I can see myself living in this house. There'll actually be a call to action for you to invest in someone that wants to buy that same home. So how can the Asheville community help? We are looking for our first buyers right now. We have most everything set up and we're ready to rock, but we need to bring forth someone that wants to buy their first home. We want to diversify our mortgage lender relationships, so I know that we have a lot of folks in real estate around here, I'd love to talk with you about how we can make Homeslice available as a down payment assistance program. I've got some pretty good inroads with the Asheville Police Department, but I don't yet with the Asheville education system, so I'd love to get in touch with some teachers and principals. And then lastly, content marketing services, because I have a day job and this is not my core competency, so we need to get the story out. We want this to be a whole community effort. So that's Homeslice.
Great. Well, you know, I was trying to describe Million Cups to somebody over the weekend, and I came up with this phrase. I said, we're not a pitch fest, we're a pitch-in fest. Because we're all going to pitch in and help Mike be successful. So that doesn't mean you can't ask hard questions, though, because that's going to help him as well. So,
please do.
So who wants to start off?
That's a lot of questions.
You're closest.
I'm closest. How long, is there like a time limit for gathering the investment for the initial down payment? Because things go super fast.
That's a really good question. It's right now we have cash in hand, so we're basically solved for those first purchases. Because you're right, it's a difficult balance running a two-sided marketplace where you're finding a buyer, collecting cash for that particular buyer. I think if we are distributed well enough among investors, we should be able to raise that cash relatively quickly. Because the goal would be that we're soliciting investment primarily from community members, but there's no reason why it couldn't be someone in California that just wants to participate in the Asheville real estate market. So outside of last year when homes were going in a day or two, I think we should actually be able to manage that.
Sorry, over here. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the great presentation. Super well thought out. But I guess I could see how this would work well in a price appreciating market where values are increasing. But what about the inverse? Presumably the buyer has 3% down if home prices drop by, say, 10% in a year. You mentioned the investors have an equity share in the property. How does that all shake out? Is there a lock-in period where the buyer can't sell for a certain amount of time? You know, if the property's underwater, like how would that shake out? Are the investors on the hook for the mortgage if the investor stops making payments, or the purchaser stops making payments on the home?
Very good question. So fewer than 0.1% of all homes go to foreclosure, and we actually expect it will be much lower than that if you're showing up with a 20% down payment to begin with. If a buyer were to default on their mortgage, there's an agreement between the investors, the mortgage company, and the buyer that there would be a forced sale. And yes, if the buyer were to sell the home too quickly, I think we've arrived at 3 years. They're guaranteed a small percentage increase, so the investors don't just lose their shirt right off the bat.
Sweet, thanks.
Of course.
Okay, so I love this. I'm your target demographic. I want to own a home and I'm a millennial.
Awesome.
There's no problems. I'm poor. I have no money and I live in Asheville, and I also have a high debt to income ratio because I went to college. So based on your presentation, it kind of looks like you would be recruiting investors to invest in the homeowners that are backed by equity and not the equity itself, which means, you know, you're investing in my ability to maintain the home, you're investing in my ability to maintain the upkeep, and then obviously continue making an income to be able to afford the payments.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you planning on navigating that? Because that gets into a lot of personal financial territory that creates a lot of risk that an investor, and also an investor, I would be very cautious to invest in me.
Sure. Great question. We're still going to be securing an 80% mortgage, so there's going to be firm underwriting for all of this, but you're much more likely to have a chance to buy a home if you've got a bag of money. If someone shows up with you with $75,000, a mortgage company is much more likely to support you. And as I said before, we'll be pre-underwriting everyone that we present forth, because we don't want to put up, we want to do good, but this isn't a charity by any means. We want to help viable homeowners that pay $1,500 or $2,000 a month in rent and do it effectively, do it regularly, consistently. We want them to own a home, because your mortgage is very likely to cost a pretty similar amount. So I think that there's a bit of financial engineering that allows someone like you to own a home.
Thanks for the presentation. A great mission. Let me ask about the regulatory environment. You didn't mention that. What regulations are you following under?
With regard to
The whole business? Well, it sounds like a security to me.
it's a great question. We're working with the securities lawyer, but we are not, the home slices are not actually securities. We are not regulated. We are not registered with the SEC as a crowdfunding intermediary, but we are observing all of those regulations. We are not going to manage or promise any sort of IRR behind our investors. So it's that you're taking a share of the market and then you're mostly hands off, which is a little different than some investments that you make, but I have pretty firm belief that if we pick the right markets, it should be ascendant and safe for most of our investors, and we've constructed ourselves so that we won't bump into securities regulation issues.
Well, maybe as a follow-up, and I'm not trying
No, do, I want it.
I'm just trying to understand it as a business. I guess let me ask about the legal aspects, right?
Yep.
Because that's a pretty long-term contract with a lot of potential complexity, right?
It's pretty complex. We've been working with some really sharp lawyers to put the whole thing together. If there's more of a question behind it, I would love to hear it.
Let's chat after.
Okay, that sounds great.
I have a quick follow-up on that. I'm going to pass it over here. I just bought a home, and I had to...
Congratulations,
Thank you
David.
very much. I had to explain to the mortgage company where the down payment was coming from. Have you spoke to mortgage companies and navigated that complexity?
We have. So we're going to be treated as a down payment assistance program, and our investors' cash is junior to the mortgage itself. So if things were to go sideways, the mortgage company is who gets paid out first. But like we said, there are mechanisms in place between the buyers and the investors that can force a sale that would happen prior to the foreclosure process. So mortgage companies are okay with it because they've got 20% in hand and they know that their 80% is safe if things go sideways.
But are they though? Because I spoke to the mortgage company, I spoke to many mortgage companies, and having to explain the cash on hand and where it came from is like a really big thing in buying a house.
Yeah, I'm aware of the gift versus loan sort of distinction there. That's part of it. But when we're clear that the mortgage company is always going to get paid first, and they've got 20% of the home's value in hand to begin with, they get pretty comfortable with it. You're watching mortgage companies go out of business today because there aren't enough mortgage starts.
Can I? Yeah.
Hi.
I have two questions. One is, would there be a product that you have for people that want to buy a house that will be fully invested by investors versus just having to go and get a mortgage?
Maybe with time, but I think we've got to prove this model first, where you've got shared equity more broadly, crowd-funded sort of shared equity, before we can get creative. The 20% and the 3% down are very intentionally pegged to existing mortgage structures.
And then the other question is, let's say that you get the down payment for the mortgage, you do the whole thing, but then you decide in the first few months or the first year that you can actually pay those investors back.
Yes.
Is that a possibility?
Yep, there's an opportunity.
So you can own your home fully
Yes.
if you want to?
Yeah, if you win the lottery or get a raise or
Yeah.
something else changes, there's a mechanism where the buyer can force purchase back the equity slices in their home. They would have to get the home appraised,
Right.
and then buy out those investors based on their equity share in the appraisal. I'll reiterate it because I don't know if we made it in the presentation. The entire program is designed to be very buyer-friendly because, as I touched on early on, the mortgage regime today is not particularly friendly to young folks that don't have a ton of cash on them.
It's crazy.
Oh,
Is it my turn? Hi.
Sure.
Good morning. I love your business model. I'm a financial advisor / entrepreneur, but anyway, I love that model. So,
awesome, thank you.
and tech models like that. So I have a couple of questions. I'll just speak to the two. The first one, how does it actually lower default risk? Kind of related to what your question is, it's like homeownership, as you know, is a complex puzzle. So from the financial planner standpoint, part of the reason why there's that down payment to begin with is not only to ensure that share of equity, but also, like, do you look at sustained income to be able to carry that house payment? Because I'm just worried that people, they get into homes that they can't afford.
Yeah, no, that's a fair concern. So again, it's going to be underwritten by mortgage companies, and you should have a handout, or there are more in that back table there, that show the comparison against an FHA loan. So versus a 3.5% down FHA loan, a $400,000 house costs about $700 less per month with Homeslice versus that FHA loan. So we think that you should be able to service that mortgage much more easily. You're not going to be broke as soon as you get into a house. Because today, FHA loans, your house is worth the second you buy the thing. This is to get out of that. That equity premium when you sell the house down the line, that's your penalty. That's the thing that the buyer is paying. And it's also the value proposition for our investors.
Thank you. So the second question, again, from kind of the personal financial planning side is, like being able to withdraw on your home equity or like to start a business, for example, taking out HELOCs, like that is another source of, having that access to collateralized debt is also another huge advantage of home ownership. So how does that work in this kind of model?
You would probably be restricted from doing so, but the alternative is that you don't own a home. So I think it's a better scenario where you're in a home, building equities, you go, realizing that appreciation. Ideally, what I think would happen is after a handful of years, we've modeled it out, and we think that if at a pretty moderate 3% annual growth, I think that's realistic from Asheville. I think you can kind of compound it 3% annual growth. You should be able to refinance after about 7 or 8 years and buy out your investors, certainly by the end of the 15 years. So at that point, once you refinance, then you have the right to execute a HELOC or a reverse mortgage or other tools like that.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your passion in this, and great job actually fielding all these questions.
Of course, thank you.
I can appreciate that you said you're kind of still on the far, you're still MVP land and you're still booting up. But as we look ahead, I really like some of your ancillary services you have on the kind of right side. The question I have is, how have you kind of determined that ordering of kind of what to do after the core business has been created? So for example, those kind of ancillary services for lawn mowing and house painting, why are those kind of at the kind of final stage, or the sixth top? How did that ordering come about?
Well, I mean, because if we don't have a community of Homeslice buyers and investors, we're offering an HOA service, really just a property manager. It's about scaling up our entire investment community and our home buyer community before we start adding those additional services, before we start creating marketing partnerships and the like. That's why the marketplace is probably a 1.5 years or 2 down the line once we've scaled up and we've entered several markets.
Got it. Core business first, then.
Core business first.
Thanks.
Also reiterating how fascinating I find this. I'm thinking of myself as an investor. So if I were to invest $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 into someone and into their home, I'm trying to decide which is the priority. Am I investing more so in the couple, or am I investing more so in the home and the market? And so I'm curious your perspective, if you were to prioritize, from an investor's perspective, am I choosing this is a couple, they have an amazing financial background, they've got DIY skills, they've done this before, versus this is the home, and this is, because I don't actually get to choose the home for them, it sounds like, based on the slides that I saw.
Yeah.
And I'm saying more that this area at that price point, this market. So if you were to rank the two, where do you feel like the primary investment is?
You're investing in a house, but you're investing in a house with a single person, with a person or a family attached to it. I don't think that you can say that it's either or. It is both of those things, right? What we presented was a teacher and a policeman that are trying to raise funds to buy a home here in Asheville. Those are stable community building jobs, so I don't expect that those are the sorts of jobs that be downsized out and cause problems for servicing the mortgage. The two are just inextricably linked. It's hard to say it's one or the other, and that's part of why it is a different model. It's sort of a GoFundMe behind a person in a home itself. You know, Mike?
No, that's all right. Cool. So, when the investor goes on the website, they're picking the homes that they want to invest in, right?
Today the website is not live. It's basically just a marketing website. What we're going to do is we're going to execute the purchases manually, hand to hand. With time, what those screens that I showed you are what we're designing. My other two co-founders are technical co-founders. One of them's a product designer, the other one's an engineer. There's going to be a couple different ways for you to get matched with investors. One is going to be what I showed you here, which is a sort of a menu of investors. The other is that you go on our platform, our map, think like a Zillow, and you say, I'm interested in 28806. And whenever there's a fundraise that happens within 28806, you'll get a ping on your phone and a real-time call to action to invest in that fundraise.
Okay, the question I have is, what's the plan for tackling a fast-moving environment, right? So even with interest rates rising and the market, quote-unquote, cooling down, right, we're still only sitting at about 1.7 months worth of inventory, meaning that if no new homes came on the market, we'd be at only 1.7 months. That's a rise of only 0.4 that we were at sitting earlier in the hot market, about way away from that. And 5 years ago, when we were sitting at 7 months of inventory for Asheville specifically, it was still a seller's market. So I guess the question is, how are buyers and investors going to get paired fast enough to raise the money so that this buyer has a competitive shot at even getting this home?
Yeah, and you know, you're totally right, the housing supply is really low, but it's not just that homes are moving so quickly. It's a lot of people have pulled their houses off the market because of the high interest rates. They decided to put their houses up for rentals because they're not getting the bites that they want when they put the house up for sale. So it's not that houses are actually selling as they were in 2021, where it's 1, 2, 3 days. It's still north of 30 days for an average home close. So I think we have, with the platform, once we're live, I think we'll be able to manage that fundraise opportunity in about a month.
So you should connect with Zach Ruiz with our EMC, because he's going to have really important data that's going to be able to kind of like offset some of what people are seeing on the MLS, kind of like get through some of that gray and really get into like the really nitty-gritty data of what's actually happening in the market.
Cool. I'd love to meet Zach. I don't know him, but sounds like a good person to know.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions for you. The first one is this built off of bootstrapping nights and weekends, and you're building it into a small business, or is it built with venture capital?
It is presently bootstrapped, but our full intent is that once we close a purchase or two, we're going to go out and raise venture capital. So those are discussions that I've been having. I have my advisor up in San Francisco, and I've got a council, a startup council together for it. So we are prepped and ready to launch our fundraise as soon as we close a purchase or two and demonstrate the model. But yes, bootstrap today, nights and weekends. We've been building the team with myself, 2 co-founders, a couple folks like Andy joined the team. Raise your hand, Andy. We're building a team of people that are all building with sweat equity, with the full intent that we launch this into many markets and with years across the entire country. We'd love to disrupt the entire approach to home financing.
My second question is this going to be a two-pronged company where you have a platform, which is the Homeslice, and you have like the professional services side of Homeslice that helps find buyers, service buyers, and get them in place and guides them through the process, or is it strictly a platform?
I don't fully understand it, I'm sorry.
So is the whole model where people go onto the site and it's all self-service, or is there a side of Homeslice in that further down model where there's actually people at Homeslice that reach out and work with buyers in more complex situations, or work with investors, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, right now we've got a local real estate agent, a guy named Don Rongstad, who owns Move Asheville Realty. He's supporting us. For any of our first-time buyers, he's agreed to waive his entire commission for our first close, so you'd be able to go to close with potentially 0 closing costs. As we scale up, I'm not entirely sure if we're going to employ our own agents or if we bring in third-party agents like we do today. It's just too far out for us to know, frankly.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hey there. Hey, we've been texting. I'm Barry, so I chair the Affordable Housing Committee in
Barry.
the City of Asheville.
How are you?
I love any kind of creative solutions, and so I appreciate your approach. My question, I guess, is because when I hear about this, I think if it's scaled, like the demand would be huge. Why the choice to go more the crowdfunding model to individuals rather than like target accredited investors where you put together pools and package loans? Which is, I think I mentioned, like the most similar program I can think about is Mountain Housing actually has a shared appreciation soft second mortgage. How would you compare against what they do, and then kind of why the model of small crowdfunding per deal rather than investor, like accredited investor pooling?
I'm not against the idea of bringing in accredited investors, but part of this is that we want to make it approachable to the consumer, to retail investors. I think where it differs from mountain housing opportunities or other like nonprofit entities is they can't move at the speed of the market. I think that's the biggest issue. I read an article in Citizen Times that mountain housing opportunity wasn't able to help anyone last year because it just takes too long and it's got restrictions that we don't have. So I think where we are, again, we're mission-based, but we are very explicitly profit-forward. We can move at the speed and the pace of the market where other opportunities like that can't.
Thank you.
And to your piece about the accredited investors, I would still be open to bringing in some institutional cash. We're not shutting that down, but this is the approach to begin with. We want to scale up the app with many users picking it up on their phones.
All right, so I have a quick question right back.
Hey.
So you said that you're looking for your first homeowner or two. So do you have a place where they can get a find homes, or do they have to find homes and then come to you and you give them the offer? Like how does that work?
We would get you underwritten, and we have the cash in hand. We would put you in touch with our agent, and you would have the ability to go find a home that fits your budget.
So basically, you give us an individual limit or a cap or what we can afford, and then we'll go out and find a home and then present that to you.
It's not entirely different from going out to buy a home regularly. It's just that you're finding 17% of the down payment from community investors.
Okay. All right.
We're not going to force anyone into a particular home. If you decide that you want this home that's outside of your budget, we probably can't help you. If you decide you want a home that investors don't want to invest in, we probably can't help you. It is complicated, but I think that there's a sweet spot where we can help people get into homes where the investors feel good about it from an investment standpoint, and you find your dream home.
Hey, over here. Can you walk through the 50% investor appreciation bonus and how that works? Is that like long term for any amount?
It's for any amount. So if you for every percent of the home's purchase price that you put in, you receive a 50% premium to your equity investment. That is, and that equity share only turns to cash once the home is sold or it's repurchased by that homeowner.
So would, in reality, then the new homeowner be somewhat underwater in their new house? Like if 80% is the bank, 17% is Homeslice, but that 17% with the 50% bonus actually 25%. Right. The bank owns 80%, Homeslice owns 25%. You got a new home, but 105% of your home is owned by others, so you kind of start off underwater, but then you build that
I hope that our homeowners last longer than their first month or two, right? That's why we're going to underwrite these guys to begin with. And again, you can't have a more interested investor than this homeowner, right? Everyone's aligned in this. Their credit score, their financial future, the home of their dreams is on the line. So they're going to do everything they can to service that through the period.
And how long is that period until they're underwater from the 105% back up to like the 95% that you said? Is that a few months? Is that like a few years or?
It would be, I believe it's just over a year until it tips the scales there. But again, that actually turns to a refinance opportunity around 7 or 8.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
Hey, so to your previous question that was asked about, so as an investor, if I decide I'm investing in this family, I'm approving of them, but then the area that they end up deciding to go with, or the house specifically, I'm like, absolutely not, I can then back out.
The way that it'll actually present is they pick among a few homes. Like they say their goals are a 3-bed, 2-bath in 28806, and it's one of these 3 homes. So when you put your cash up, you're gonna say, I know that my investment's gonna be into one of these few homes.
Oh, I see. And then, so what happens if they go and bid on those 3 homes? 1, 2, 3 of those homes and they get none of them?
Then the cash will get returned. We're not gonna look to steal anyone's money. We know that it's a competitive bidding situation. But we're arming first-time buyers to be competitive, where they often aren't today.
Sure, thank you.
Of course.
All right, I changed sides of the room so I can ask another question. But you didn't get a lot of detailed questions, but you mentioned right at the beginning, mission first. A few minutes ago you said something, I can't exactly remember, something about transforming homeownership, or the market, right? Can you lean into that a little bit? What's your vision for what it looks like when your company fully succeeds?
If our company is fully successful, we've created tens or hundreds of thousands of first-time buyers, which is going to convey some real benefits to those people and to society broadly. We've likely shifted people's mindset with regard to fractional ownership, because with technology and contracts today, there's not really anything that stops us other than the existing institutions. It's a really simple bit of financial engineering, and the incentives are really clear to people. So it's not that this couldn't be done, it's just that it doesn't exist today. I think that there's a world where more people own their first homes rather than mini rental empires that pop up all over the place and people pursuing the like burner house flipping stuff and all this like TikTok get rich quick. I want those benefits to convey more broadly to first time homeowners.
Let's do like 1 or 2 more. Go ahead.
Hey Mike.
Jeff.
Hey buddy, I like the logo, haven't seen it before, I like that a lot.
It's like an H, a house, and a pizza.
You really cover all the bases. So housing has a long history with discrimination. And so here's a quick, that's a tee up to my question. And then going back 2.5 years, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all of these major home lenders set aggressive quotas to increase black home ownership. And if you looked at the news from a couple weeks ago, they all grossly missed. Like, they haven't increased the share of black home ownership across America. And so I wonder if there's an angle for Homeslice to look at rates of non-approved loans and how that can apply to who's putting up the bid to crowdfund on your site. But I also worry very much that on your site, if me and my family, which is a heteronormative, white passing couple with 2 kids, if we get funded really quickly, but an interracial gay couple doesn't get funded, and how does that equity of discrimination, right? Or how does that come across on the site? Are you teeing yourself up for a culture war on the site, backed by who's getting invested in who?
Thanks, Jeff. No, that's a real consideration. Diversity is tremendously important, but this is part of where we're approaching this is that we want to go after essential professionals, teachers, police, because I think that is, it's an unassailable message to support those essential professionals, and it's the sort of thing that will support our community. And as I said, we're going to be pre-underwriting who it is that goes forth, so if we set our own targets, we will only present the people that we want to fundraise and own homes. That has its own serious issues as we scale up, right? Because we don't want to be seen as someone that's disadvantaging a certain group or ignoring a certain group. We're thinking about it. I would be lying if I said we had a rock solid plan on it right now. Our goal is to, our only inviolable principle in this is that it's a first-time buyer. From there, we want to support locals, police, and teachers. When you layer on top of that different racial issues and racial disparities, that's going to be a next goal. But it is a little bit further down the line for us. But it's an excellent consideration that non-approved loans approach. I think that that's a real thing.
I think it's a space you can take advantage of, is you can move in a market that's less regulated than a traditional bank.
So you could be
Right.
trying to increase, for example, black ownership in there.
I agree with that, and I think that we're going to be doing that as Homeslice, and we don't have the same, I want our brand to be built that a seller and investors know that if it's a Homeslice buyer, you're doing good for the community. What exactly that looks like today is police and teachers. What that looks like in the future is going to evolve, and I think that you're spot on.
Well, I think we've made Mike sweat sufficiently for today, so